Hello and welcome to week 6 of this global Mazda MX-5 Cup Car video tutorial series for virtualracingschool.com. We visit the first of 2 oval circuits on the calendar this season with the road configuration at Charlotte Motor Speedway. This is a classic roval layout consisting of a technical infield road course with challenging corners featuring significant camber and elevation changes, but it also includes most of the high-speed outer oval course as well, with its heavy banking. So you can expect to see drafting or slipstreaming play a huge part in the racing here at Charlotte, so it's important to have good racecraft to use it to your advantage. So once again, I've driven a lap in default weather with the baseline setup, which was fairly solid, considering how difficult the infield is to nail together. So we'll play the lap through first before then going into further analysis. So if we take it to the end of my outlap, now the important thing here is I find it helps to just leave the car wide on the approach to turn 1. Normally for the best lap time you want to be keeping it really tight as you approach the start-finish line, but you can have a bit of a straighter approach to turn 1, to the braking zone for turn 1, if you keep the car a bit wider. So in terms of braking references for turn 1, there isn't really much. You've got this red sign on the wall, but you need to be braking quite significantly after that. And if we just play it through, so I'm braking much later than that, in fact downshifting into 3rd gear, but then picking up the throttle really early and carrying lots of speed through turn 1. So we'll just take that back. So obviously fairly hard on the brakes. So yeah, significantly after the sign we're on the brakes, braking fairly hard, and just trying to clip this white line near the grass here. We want our car to be basically fully over that. You don't want to be touching the grass ideally. You can get an incident penalty for that, but you do want to be getting quite close to it. And then so as soon as that happens, I'm instantly back on the throttle, back on the power, and running it. I'm trying to keep the car as tight as possible because my entry speed is quite significant. The car is kind of forced to use all of the road in the middle of the corner, and this is kind of the widest placement that the car will have, and you need to be quite cautious here. I've been quite committed this time. You need to be if you want to get a good lap time, but you have this wall on the exit here, or sorry, in sort of the middle of the corner, because it's basically a double apex. So obviously we've had our first apex. We're now out to our furthest, widest position, but we need to avoid this wall on the outside. So obviously I'm very, very close to it there. Wow, I didn't quite realise just how close I was. So fortunately I got away with that, and I kept my commitment to full throttle. And then we want to be bringing the car back in tight for the second apex. You want to be running close to this inside wall along this line, and then continuing to steer to the left to open up the next right hander, which is turn 3. So this is quite a fast approach, still in 4th gear, just kind of teasing the brake pedal and the throttle pedal just to get the car slowed down, while still maintaining quite a lot of speed. And also the reason I'm playing with the throttle there is to sort of balance any oversteer, because it's quite easy to get the car to hook up too much and you'll get some nasty oversteer and you'll potentially run wide over here. So you just need to be cautious of that. So I've slowed the car down nicely. In terms of line, this is pretty much where you want to be. I think you can get away with cutting it a little bit more before you get a penalty, so that was okay. And then you'll be carrying enough speed, still in 4th gear. You will need to downshift at this point. I pretty much downshift at the widest part of the track, or the widest position for my car. But obviously you want to keep the car tidy enough so that you're not heading over onto this outside grass or gravel. I think it's just dried grass. But so the most important thing really is to keep the car in line. It's very easy to get sideways here, and if you do that you lose momentum and you will run wide, and also overheat the tyres as well. So if we just play that through, dropped it down to 3rd gear, picking up the throttle nice and early, hesitating slightly on the exit because I was just running a little bit wide. So I had a fairly early turn in there, which just meant that I was pinching myself a little bit on the exit. So this is okay. A slightly later turn in would be ideal, I guess. You'll notice how, again, I'm sort of half a car width to the inside of this white line. Again, you don't want to be abusing that too much, otherwise you will get penalised. And then I do have a hesitation on the throttle as I sense that the car is just potentially about to run wide, and I do just pick up the grass on the exit, but it's just one wheel dropped, so no dramas there, everything is okay. Up to 4th gear. The next right hander of turn 5 is very fast, but it's definitely not flat out. But you don't really need to brake for it. So I had a few lifts there, but I didn't actually brake. And in terms of car placement, you want to be as close to this curb on the inside as possible to have a nice direct route. So yeah, 4th gear, still carrying a decent amount of speed, which carries the car up to the outermost part of the circuit once again. And we want to be braking this time for the right hander of turn 6, but it's a very gentle braking zone that begins quite early, so I'm fairly early on the brakes right now. So if we just take a look at that, so I'm well before I've reached the edge of the circuit. I'm on the brakes, but I'm not braking very hard. That's probably only about 20%, 25%, and that's because I'm still turning, so the car is still loaded up, so we can't afford to abuse the brakes there, otherwise we'll induce all sorts of slides or problems. So blipping the throttle down into 3rd, maintaining that brake pressure, continuing to slow the car until we get a nice apex for turn 6. So we need to be nice and tight here for our apex, which will allow us to so we've got the car sufficiently slowed to allow us to keep the car nice and tight on the exit. We don't want to exit any further than the middle of the circuit, and ideally within sort of the right hand third. So that's what I've managed to do here. So I'm keeping the car nice and tight over to the right, and then leaving it in third gear. We want to just kind of play with the throttle. I don't even brake for this corner. Sometimes I do, so I guarantee that my foot was probably hovering on the brake pedal, but on this particular occasion I just took a series of lifts until I was satisfied, several lifts in fact, one on the exit, until I was satisfied that I didn't have to lift off again. So, and if we just take it back, we'll just have a quick look over the line once again. So we do bring it over to the right hand side, but not fully. So this is about as far over to the right as we get. So yeah, still within about the right hand third of the circuit. So as we if we just take that back, yeah, so there's an apex there. We run a little bit wide, then we kind of bring it back, but not fully over to the right hand side, because we immediately want to start turning into the left hander of 7 and 8, which we want to kind of combine into one corner. So, and there's all sorts of interesting elevations going on here. The circuit rather, kind of compresses here, so you get a bit more grip, but then it kind of drops away, so the car goes light right now. So the car tends to understeer from apex out on this corner, or at least up until you sort of get past this fencing. From that point onwards, you typically actually have some oversteer. So this is quite nice, quite a tight apex. Still not quite as tight as it could have been though. And there's no curb to protect you though, so you want to avoid dropping a wheel in the grass there. And more significantly, because I was understeering so much on this particular lap, I had a few lifts before the exit. So I tried to, so I'm full power now, but then I have a big lift. So I guess the optimal approach there would be to not commit to full power until you know you don't have to lift off, but it was just a bit too early there, but it was still okay. The lift was sufficient to pull me back round for a nice tight exit. And notice my car positioning on the exit. I'm quite close to this infield grass, and that gives us a nice shallow angle onto the banking. We don't want to attack the banking with too sharp an angle. And then it's very, very straightforward from this point on. You obviously just want to keep the car nice and tight, very near the apron, at the bottom of the banking, all the way round. And for the straight towards 11 and 12, you don't need to go up the banking whatsoever. You just need to, you basically just keep the car nice and low the whole way down. Keep the car nice and low, don't need to go above that line. Again, keeping close to the apron here. Pretty basic stuff, it's comfortably flat out. So just keep the lines as tight as possible. Directly en route to the inside infield grass there, and across the line as well. So notice how we went across the line, we kept it tight again. So normally when we were approaching turn 1 for the next lap, we would directly aim for the Charlotte sign there. From sort of this position onwards, we would aim for the Charlotte sign. But because it's a hot lap and we want a decent time, we shorten the distance to the line just by keeping it a bit tighter there, basically. And there we are. So that was a 1:21.246. So you can find all setups, replays and telemetry for your own use and analysis on virtualracingschool.com, where you can also book one-on-one tuition with top drivers from the likes of Coanda Sibsport. Good luck for this week, and feel free to post any questions or comments below. Thanks for watching.